Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. This is continuing the 3K sub celebration request. Um, Jason Atreides, 2542. If that's a Dune reference, I appreciate it. Request to explain where you think Warframe is headed, and do you really see it going into 10 years? A grand chance for a grand rant. True, I do love talking. Uh, Blako43 said, I agree, would be interesting to hear your thoughts on where the game is headed and how you think the game has improved, changed since a few years back. Um, well, let's just start with the basics. Um, this is purely my personal, skeptical idea of what it might be. But let's start with the basics. Warframe has massively improved. And at any point in time, the general trend has been, when you compare it, obviously COVID was sort of the exception. But if you were to compare it to like when Cetus came out, or like when Fortuna came out, the general trend has been overall improvement. So let's just get that straight first and foremost. Warframe has gotten better. Um, it has been a series of trade-offs. But overall, when you tally everything up, it's a series of positives. Now, whether you value that, because Warframe has definitely been one of those games which has shed veterans to make rooms for newer players. It depends on who you ask, and if you are metalheads, Warframe is kind of the Metallica of third-person shooters. Um, the people that played years and years ago, as few of them as there are, will easily tell you that the game is not the same, and it's completely factual. Obviously, stuff has been updated, but I mean, just in terms of the feeling of the game, Warframe, when I played it right after beta, like closed beta, like obviously the game's still in beta, which is a meme in and of itself, had very much a sort of grim dark idea behind it. Like if you really boiled down to it, it was like you're a space ninja and like everything's gone to shit sort of thing. Um, and you're very much, you know, like a waif in the storm. Like you're basically getting beat up by the environment. Like things were legitimately stronger than you. Now that's not really the case. There's the boom and zoom meta. You take your AoE taunt core, you nuke the room, move on to the next tile or the next room in the tile, nuke that room. You really didn't have that kind of option back in the day. And that was back when I did play. Then I took like a pretty sizable break, came back right after Fortuna. So I skipped a lot of the middle ground. So I can only speak to this. Warframe has gotten better. But in terms of where is it going, there is so much to consider on whether or not it's going to be good or not. Because before we at least had Steve at the helm, so we knew we would get, for better or worse, we would get a similar game experience. Now that we've got the new group, they are making very rapid changes that I could see upsetting people. Because one of the things that is for better, honestly, in terms of longevity for Warframe, is that Warframe didn't really change too much in terms of feel, like parkour before they came out with like Void Sling hadn't changed in a long time. Basically since Operator came out, right? Like that was the last big thing where like it changed how you moved through a level. Obviously, like I'm on Ureli right now. Like obviously being on Marilena is kind of cool. If you didn't get stuck on everything, would be a neat way to get through the missions. But the bread and butter of Warframe has always sort of been its movement. And they sort of glanced against it, but they sort of went back on it. I guess they were trying to make room for um like cell phones, because the Void Sling doesn't make sense for people on using keyboard and mouse. And to a lot of sense, it doesn't make sense for people using controllers either. They can literally input functions fast enough to where you can zip through a level, especially on a keyboard and mouse, where a cell phone user might not be able to. So they really haven't messed with like the core gameplay. And for people like with like accessibility needs, Warframe is probably going to put a substantial amount of effort compared to what it used to in terms of like accessibility. Like we saw in the last dev stream, they're doing the highlights for allies and enemies. Obviously, it's going to make playing with a Necros player significantly more enjoyable. And also being the Necros significantly more enjoyable. Because I don't know about you, but I definitely had an issue with that. Especially if there were 2 Necroses on the team. That's a lot of clones, right? Little specters running around. It gets to be kind of a struggle to see what the hell you're shooting. But stuff like that, I think they're going to work well more into accessibility issues and make the game a little bit more clear. They talked about how they were going to work on being able to pause and see icons and buffs and naming them more clearly, which can only be a net positive. Because, I mean, God forbid you have, like, a Wisp, a Trinity, and, like, an Octavia player on the same team. Like, you've got, like, 3 rows of fucking buffs. And then you could have, like, Operator, like, focus school buffs on top of it. It can be insane. And then you have the Galvanized stacks, and then you have, like, Gladiator stacks, and then you have the Steel Path Arcane stacks. You're looking at a very cluttered toolbar, or info bar up at the top. So I think they're going to work more into clarity and making the screen less busy. Because though on my screen it's not that big of an issue, but I'm playing on computer, I could imagine somebody running like a min-spec computer where it's like 480p or like 720p. Those icons would probably take up a substantial amount of space. So I think they're going to make accessibility. They're going to continue to work on it because it's something that's very clear to see progress on. Questline. If we assume that Deviri is the first example of the new group completing their own style of quest, we might be in trouble. But obviously it was their first one, so I'm willing to call it a mulligan. But if their idea of taking over Warframe is okay, it's my turn to do whatever the fuck I want. And I know this sounds really pessimistic, but it's just the eternalism thing. Listen, leave that to the Marvel comics. You know, the multiverse, leave that to them. Because the fact is to do a multiverse, right? To do or eternalism, where it's like, you know, timelines on timelines on timelines correctly, is going to take years. And it's going to burn people out. And with the way Warframe is currently structured and has been structured for a while, you kind of have what the quest lines are, and that's the main moving point. And then you just sort of go back to doing whatever you were doing. But, like, some tiles would pop up, and it'd be, like, sort of related to what the quest line was, right? Like, if you talk about, like, the old war, right? With, like, you know, the Kuva Fortress. Like, are you really engaging in the old war, right? Like, it's just sort of like, oh, you get a quest line, you get a new tile, and now you run missions on that new tile. It's not really, when you run your normal missions, you're not really advancing a quest line outside of the quest. You're not moving the story forward. There's not, what Warframe isn't a game that has like every 2 weeks or something like that, you get like a mini tiny update where it's like a mini event and you do like 3 or 4 missions, and based on what the community picks or how they support, changes what the quest line is or change what the future quest is that's going to be popping up in a couple weeks. We've never been that kind of game. You do the quest, it's separate, and then you go about your business. But if their way of dealing with quests is, goody, we get to do whatever the fuck we want now, and their first thing is, oh, we're going to do multiple timelines. I personally, having seen other, you know, stories, having seen other games try that, it doesn't end well. And if they try to put it in like a single quest line, like the running joke that I saw, I don't have the image, but it was, you were Neo in the Matrix, and like all of the Smiths were Albrights. And then there was Kane the Conqueror. I saw a little, for a GIF, where Kane the Conqueror had Albright's face on it, and they're like, how many did you call, right? Like the end of, what was it, the Ant-Man? Whatever the latest one was. And all of the Kanes showed up. And it's like all the Albrights, like, I don't want that, okay? I know that's like a hyperbolic example, but I don't want that. It's cheap. The Marvel Universe gets a pass because it was kind of the show that created that and like heavily popularized that. But that's been done a bunch of times before. Okay. So I don't want that, especially with how Warframe does its quests. That sort of quest would take months and months and months to play through properly. But we're probably going to get a quest that's like a couple hours. Obviously, that's the most recent one, but 1999 is like the future projection. So obviously, with like Deviri being like the end cap of the major plot point, or the major plot in Warframe, there's really 2 ways you can look at it. They're going to continue with the solar system, or they're going to start up a new grand arc, if you will, like a huge arc. And it looks like they're doing the go back in time gist. Now, what I suspect, if I'm going to steel man that 1999 is like the total direction, and not like a major quest line where it's like it spans like 3 or 4 quests. Pardon, I got the hiccups. It means the game is going to get slower. Like, in terms of mobility, the game is going to get slower. And personally, I kind of don't play Warframe to be slow. Like, if I wanted to play Gears of War, I would go play Gears of War. You know what I mean? Like, I play Warframe to be a power fantasy. So hopefully it's like a small quest line, like running around as Arthur. I hope that's not a spoiler. Um, is kind of a quest line thing. Maybe it's something you continue over a bit. And the man on the wall is more of a perpetual enemy. But the fact is Warframe, we really don't have any relevant perpetual bosses. Like, you get a quest, you get a boss maybe, and then that boss gets a node, and there's a tile set attached with the quest, right? So I could see something like that. But, and here's the thing where I get like, I'm not, listen, I love Warframe, so this is coming from a place of caring. But the fact is I'm just not looking outside of quests. I'm just not looking to be blown away. Like, I'm not looking for it to reinvent the wheel. I want the game to be balanced. They're never going to do it. And that's fine. It's their game. I am a customer. I can take or leave it. And right now, I'm taking it. Right? If they decide to really mess around with the like the movement too much, it's like one of the highest selling points of the game is that you get to move in this game unlike any other game, right? So the fact is is that the power fantasy, the movement fantasy, the build flexibility is utterly insane in Warframe. The synergy between the frames, you can do whatever you want. Most people don't do anything. I don't see changing. But in terms of the flavor of how Warframe is, I actually see it changing, where we haven't really had to deal with it before. Because the fact is that Warframe, in terms of its like core feel, hasn't changed in years. You'll have like little excursions where it's like an Eidolon hunt or a Ropalist hunt, where the game has like mechanics to it, or like Profit Taker, and then it just goes back to the regular mechanics, right? So it's like an exception, you learn the fight, or maybe like a Lefanis where you have to like wait for the heads to pop up, or like the Zealot where you have to like carry around the lantern. Like very minor mechanics. Warframe is not very mechanically strong in terms of like outside of parkour, like your core skill set. When we had stuff like raids, they literally threw the raiding community out. Like, I'm just being honest. Like, as mean as it is, they literally tossed an entire community. Like, it's like it would be like taking the people that do conservation and literally just tossing them out. That's what they did to the raiding community. So the fact is that I see for the first time the new group has gotten control of like how they want to flavor Warframe, and we have to expect mistakes. Okay, the heirloom set was a bit of a fuck up. Okay, they even acknowledged it. Um, it's like one of those things where it's like it's kind of hard when you see the heirloom set, and what it was supposed to represent, not understanding why people would hate it. It's because like the deck skin, we didn't really get a deck skin for year 10, right? We got the heirloom skins, and normally you get a deck skin, and I think it was what a gunblade, um, like a gunblade skin, but we didn't get like a new weapon or like a skin for a frame, right? We got the heirloom skins, and you had to pay a bunch of money to be part of the 10-year celebration, and it's time limited. So we're going to have to expect them. It is safer to assume that they will fuck it up and then fix it quickly. Should be the expectation because they're new. One of the things I'm not trying to be mean about it, but in terms of like when you see upper management, right? And that's basically what it is. What would you be happy seeing upper management in their free time doing anything but playing Warframe? Right? Like we've got let me pull up. What is it? Oh god, this is going to be kind of dangerous. Pulling up Twitter. But in Reb's free time, she's advertising on her personal Twitter playing other games. Pablo is streaming and doing other things. Now, I have no problem with them on their own time. If it was a personal account, nobody could say anything and you wouldn't have any grounds to. But these are DE linked accounts. Like it's DE Reb4, DE Pablo, and they're streaming anything but Warframe. Like it's pretty notorious, like not notorious, but it's pretty well known that Rebecca plays like Final Fantasy, right? And she's playing Baldur's Gate, and that's fine. But it's a difference between being an employee and you're in charge of your own fucking game. I would expect the person in charge of running the ship, like a captain of a fishing trawler. Anybody on that ship that would be like, "Oh my god, I could fish, I could drive a boat all day every day. This is what I want to do my life for." Or this is what I want to spend my life on, crab fishing or whatever. I would expect the captain to be that person. But then you see them and they're doing, like, it's like as soon as they get off the ship, they're like, no, 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 I'm not on the clock. But they're salaried, right? It's like, no, 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 I'm not working right now. I'm going to do anything but the game. Like, that is the person that is supposed to be making the game fun. Like, when they would play, like, Final Fantasy online, right? Like, listen, if there's stuff that's fun, bitch, take notes, okay? Bring it into the game. Like, that is literally your fucking job. And I kind of don't see that happening. I mean, obviously, like, they can have their own personal life. I'm not criticizing that, but, like, when during, like, TennoCon, and this is another thing I'll get into, is, like, timing of releases. They suck at it. They have always fucking sucked at releases. They're horrible at timing this shit. Is it like TennoCon? Like, it's the Super Bowl of Warframe. And they're cracking jokes about other games. You know what I'm saying? Like, when it is, like, obviously, like, if it's like a prime time or some shit, who cares, right? Like, we're all there just to kind of, like, get the drop and, like, hang out and, like, see the art and whatever. And, like, people just need to have, like, a good time or whatever. Maybe they'll give you, like, a little bit of updates or something like that. But, like, so it's, like, prime time, which is, like, casual. And then you have, like, a dev stream, which is a bigger deal. And then TennoCon is, like, the Super Bowl. And they're in any capacity talking about another fucking game and talking about how, like, all of Reb's boyfriends or some shit like that on this game dumped her or something like that. I didn't really get it, but, like, somebody explained to me and it was like, oh, she had somebody that she was crushing on in a video game, and I was like, wait, Warframe? And they were like, no, 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 it's another game. Like, there's characters that, like, you can date and shit, and I'm like, what the fuck ever, dude? Okay. I mean, that's besides the point, but like that is now, she went from the community director to the person that's the creative director, and that is a responsible position, and I would expect that person to be the single most gung-ho person ever to be about Warframe, and I'm not seeing it. So it's not really like a good look, but it's not really bad, but it's like one of those things where it's like, you know, you got a kid playing on your football team and they don't want to practice. It's like, okay, well, you know, if they perform in games, like they keep their spot, but like we all know how this works out. And then there's things like that DE will never fix. Like DE will never fix anything in terms of timing their releases. When is the last time they've ever timed a release with TennoCon? Like, you can look at, let's see, Warframe player count. Let's see if I can find a better one. Steam charts. Wow, this chart sucks. Hold on. Okay, so we'll look at the player count. I found some random website. I'm not familiar with this one. You can see where the TennoCons are. Like, this would be a TennoCon. That would be a TennoCon. That would be a TennoCon. You can see where the spikes are. And this one is massively underreported. Okay. But you can see where the spikes are. And that's where most of the players are watching, right? They've never released anything with TennoCon. And it doesn't make any sense if you think about it at all. So, like, these are the sort of things where it's like the game would grow based on it. If they came out, if they shelved Deviri and worked out the bugs, okay, and made Deviri the single most painless launch, and let's be honest here, let's give them credit where credit is due. Deviri was one of the better launches. The difference between the Deviri launch and the Zariman launch and the Railjack launch are night and day. Deviri had issues, but it was nowhere near as bad as Railjack. Okay? It was nowhere near as bad as the Zariman. So it was a really good release as far as Warframe is concerned. But if they had held off on Deviri and released it at TennoCon, completely polished, they would have converted 200,000 people watching on Twitch and like however many thousand on YouTube immediately into players. I'd say like a 50% conversion rate. And it would have been a clean launch. You would have had all these people that are just watching and checking out. And the thing is those watch statistics don't even count in terms of like people in game. Now it counts on Twitch. But if you have people that are in like the just chatting section, which I did see a couple of, not a lot, but the just chatting section, watching TennoCon, not in the Warframe section, you would then convert a lot of those people also. They're never going to release anything at the Super Bowl with like a clean launch. And that's the sort of stuff that like I find frustrating because it's literally low-hanging fruit. I don't see them ever truly doing a release where the release doesn't treat the players as like an alpha tester. And I know that's a really old meme in the Warframe community, but it's just I don't see that changing. Like there's never going to be a point. They've talked about beta tests before and how expensive they are. But the same thing with like community feedback. I don't see this changing. And the reason why I'm bringing this stuff up is I'm not trying to like just bitch about it, even though I kind of am. Is this is the stuff that other games do naturally, and it helps them grow. It helps them get more money. It helps them keep players. You know, there needs to be beta testers for the beta, right? There needs to be people like say get like your Warframe creators. Like what why don't you have them? Grab like 20, 30 people from their community, from each of their communities, and everybody goes to like a beta server. Like a beta server or whatever the fuck you would call it. Where you don't need like a shit ton of people, but you just need people to be able to play the game. A lot of the stuff that we've had, like with Railjack, how's a server going to help with that? Right? Like it's all peer-to-peer. So the idea of needing like a beta server is like for what? Like for a relay? And I don't see them fixing stuff like that anytime soon. They're really, really focused on crossplay and cross save. And now they're going for clans. And yeah, I'll admit, like, I'm stoked for that as like a clan and alliance leader, having like Xbox clans in the alliance. That'd be dope. Especially for some of the clans that are in the alliance that have like a PC version and like an Xbox clan, but it's really one clan. Like that would be dope for them to just hybridize, boom, join forces, you're good to go, right? But this is the sort of stuff where it's like, this is what allows Warframe to grow, would allow Warframe to grow way more organically. And it's like all mechanics stuff. Because like obviously Warframe can tell a story. But I don't see them fixing some very core things. Like remember, it wasn't even until not last TennoCon, but the one before that, where they even thought to put out a survey. And that was like year 9. They hadn't surveyed anybody. And Warframe has always had an issue with like being pretty tone deaf to like community recommendations. Not that they don't take recommendations at all, but like the community has to like really come together over something and then they'll relent on it. Like, let's not forget like Void Sling. The community fucking hated it. And they even came out on stream. Oh, let's see if let's see, do I still have this VOD? Probably not. Yeah, it looks like I don't have it. My bad. But the Void Sling issue, they straight up said they weren't going to change anything. When the community kind of blew up about it, they straight up said they weren't going to do anything about it. And the community was pissed because it's like literally the one universally loved thing. And then they sped it up to the point where it was like half of a Void Dash. I mean, it's still way slower than a void dash, but they're like, oh, we're trying, like, they were like, we need to slow the game down. Like, if they had just come out and said, like, especially with, like, the Blood Rush nerf, if they had been like, listen, y'all are doing too much damage. We're just going to tone it down. It's not going to be a hard nerf, but, like, when they say stuff like that, like, it really is degrading to the community. And what was the other one? Attack speed. We want people to be able to see the animations. Like, that is a degrading answer. Like, everybody was like, you've got to be kidding me. They said it. Everybody thought it was fucking stupid. And everybody was like, okay, they're rather going to insult us than actually answer the community. And that's just kind of Warframe, right? Like, and then they'll criticize you for, like, they'll get, like, defensive and criticize, and they'll be like, oh, you know, personal attacks and whatever. Like, most of us have seen Rithalius's videos, but it is just kind of how Warframe is. And they're not going to fix this stuff. It's just, Warframe is Canadian. They're going to be Canadian. And this is just kind of how they do things. So in terms of the main flavor of Warframe, I don't see it changing ever. Now, lore-wise, for 1999, Albright and Trotty, I think it's cool. I hate the fucking eternalism aspect. I am not a fan of it. They have really, really, really gotta nail it. But if they try to use it in any way, shape, or form to just artificially add, like, confusing elements, like, if they cheapen it at all, it immediately is going to become dog shit. And I am so wary of that fact. Because, like, now that we have, like, the eternalism thing, like, it's like, oh, Entradi is the man in the wall, then who came through at the end of the new war? Is that actually Albright and Trotty coming back through, or was, like, has it always been Albright and Trotty? Like, obviously you can theory craft what it is, but let's be honest here, like, the entire game, they could completely change whatever they want about it with a couple of specific things where they specifically changed for this. Like, we have, like, the Calypso protocol, so that's something very specific, but they could completely blow this out of the park in terms of, like, consistency with, like, the prior quest lines. Now that we have this eternalism thing, it can be any version of Entradi standing there, and we're not gonna fucking know who it was. It could be, oh, Entradi, like Albright Entradi as the man in the wall. It could be, like, a corrupted version of Albright Entradi who, like, is corrupted by the man in the wall, but, like, really Albright Entradi still in the broken thing by where we went through. He's, like, dead there, so this is, like, an illusion. Or it could be, like, another thing where it's like, oh, you're caught in a snow globe, or, like, it's some dying old man's dream or whatever. Like, now that we have this eternalism thing, it's really anybody's guess. So as positive or negative as that is, it's really, really hard to nail on what exactly they could possibly be going for. So it does look like they're going to try to loop a heavily dark sector referencing expansion, right? Warframe 1999 is going to heavily reference dark sector. And listen, y'all can say whatever you want about, like, oh, it's not dark sector. Listen, there's literally dark sector promo posters in the subway. It's clearly a reference to dark sector. You can say it's not canon, but that was before eternalism. All they gotta say is dark sector was a different timeline, and that's the end of the conversation. You can't say it's not canon anymore. Right? Like, because it's just, they opened up that bag of beans where it's like, before there was, like, a golden timeline with, like, some weird deviations, but there was still the same canon timeline. Now it's like Marvel's What If episodes, right? Like, is it canon? Is it not canon? It's officially produced for sure, but like, is this really part of the same timeline? We don't know. Well, now because of eternalism, you don't fucking know, and ta-da, it doesn't matter. It's part of the same universe, right? Because it's going to be heavily referencing Dark Sector, but then also it wouldn't be Dark Sector because then how would you like? It depends on how literal and nuanced, bro, you want to get. Because like, it obviously wouldn't be Dark Sector because there's Dark Sector posters for movies on the subway, right? Like, so obviously Dark Sector exists, but like, oh, in this universe is Dark Sector a video game, right? Like, you don't know where they're coming at from, right? So this is the part of the thing that I hate about it is like, I love the lore. Warframe has got absolutely phenomenal lore. And let me tell you, if they fuck up this eternalism thing, it's gonna shoot the lore to shit. So I hope they nail it, right? It's like I hope they do well. Like if you wish that they fucked it up and like you mean it, like you're on the same boat. It's like wishing your captain would crash into an iceberg, right? Like you're on the boat too. Kind of wish the captain wasn't playing like Final Fantasy all the fucking time, but like that would work out too. But I'm sure they're working. But like that's the thing is like I want them to be playing the game. Like if anybody's supposed to be the most enthusiastic person in the room, I would want them to be like a good captain, right? So it's one of those things we don't know, and the eternalism is the thing that fucks everything up. Because it's like, oh, like I know I got hit on the TennoCon thing, the live reaction to TennoCon. The person was like, "Oh, Dark Sector isn't canon." Didn't think so. It's like, bro, it's timelines now. Like we don't know how far they want to take it. All they have to say is Dark Sector was a different timeline, and there's Dark Sector posters on the subway. Okay, like is Dark Sector a video game in the new timeline, like the 1999 timeline? Because like the last thing I want to have happen is like they make some cheesy reference to like the man in the wall causing Y2K. Like that would be fucking ridiculous. It's like, oh, the technocyte virus is like the Y2K bug. Yeah, no, I don't want that. Like even if they joke about it, I wouldn't want it. So I know it's not a very hopeful take on it, but it is my take. That being said, in terms of gameplay and bugs, let's be honest here, it's probably going to be less buggy. They seem to be doing incredibly well, and they definitely had some quality of life changes in mind once they took over. Um, they're probably going to be firing on all cylinders. I think they very clearly understand that they need to shorten the acquisition because like of all the systems that everything in Warframe is built on, they haven't done anything about collecting mods, but like gaining like syndicate standing is like a fucking breeze now, bro. Like gaining standings with like each of the syndicates and like the syndicates and like the cities and whatnot, you start at 15k, right? Like MR0 is like half of MR30. You only gain 500 each time. Like they have massively sped this up. I don't know if y'all remember like the new people because that happened a while ago, but it used to be like that was one of the bigger things of MR is that you could get more standing in a day. And it used to be you would gain 1,000 standing possible in a day based on your MR. So if you were like MR10, you could get like 10,000 standing. If you were MR30, you could get like 30,000 standing. And like now, because I'm MR33, I can get like 32 and a half or something fucking weird. But that used to be one of the benefits of gaining MR. But now if you're MR0, you can gain like 15 or something like that. Like the standings grind is insanely fast now. So they're acknowledging that there's so many systems and so many places you have to be. I think they're going to be speeding the game up massively. to try to get everybody on the same page. And that can only help, but it also cheapens the game. So that's going to be a balancing act on their end. Because if you don't go to like Cetus or whatever and get like 100 munitions or something like that, like if Plague Star doesn't come back, players are going to have to go to Cetus when they get to like the Zeraman. Like I remember when the Zeraman first came out, there were a bunch of new players where they're like MR4, MR5 or something like that. Like they were super low. And they were trying to kill angels with moat amps because they got rushed. Like they had some friends try to help them out, and they got them like a Brahma and a Nucor. Well, a Brahma and a Nucor doesn't really help you against an angel too much. Like obviously it's gonna do damage, right? But like it's not gonna be the thing that like blows it up as you're used to. And they were like, oh, I can't kill any of the angels. And then they had to go back to Cetus and farm all this standing. Then they were like, oh, it's not a meta amp. And then they went to Fortuna and had to do a bunch of fucking standing there. And then they had to get a bunch of focus. You know, they had to get like a focus school maxed out. And they're like, oh, God, I actually have like all of this work that's not doing what I want to do. I think DE is going to be working on that sort of shit. So in terms of making... accelerating people to the end game, I think they're going to be massively trimming down the requirements. Like, sort of things like, I could see, I know this is going to sound insane, but like what they do with the Kuva weapons, where you trim things out, I could see them doing that with the vault mods, where you burn through all of the vault mods. The vault mods on demos, where every time you go in, you just go in and get one of every vault mod, and then as you go in, once you get everything, it starts the thing over again, and then you just run through again to just make it so you just pass through. You just have to run them a couple times, and you've got everything one time, right? Because it's just vault mods can take a really long time. And there's no reason why those critical deceleration or the 200% crit chance with like the minus fire rate mods need to be so expensive, right? So it is what it is. But I think they're going to work more on quality of life than what we're used to. And I think they're going to start accelerating the game more in terms of like streamlining the lower levels. So they already talked about like removing the Mark 1 weapons from Vor's quest. Obviously they're still going to be in the store. But the flawed mods are going away. Big rip. That sucks. What was it? Flawed aiming mutation. GG, bros, for those of you that have that. You're a real one. I don't know, it'll be interesting. But that's what I think about like the future of Warframe. Quality of life is going to be a high priority for a bit. They're going to do quality of life, and the quest is what they're going to focus on. And we're probably not going to get a lot of missions that are interesting. It's going to be... I think they're going to continue doing this patchwork thing. Unless 1999 is literally a different solar system. Right? Like, we know the next one, Whispers in the Walls, is... going to be this solar system, but 1999, it would make perfect sense if that was literally just a different solar system, or was like what they did with like the Narmer in the New War, the Narmer missions, where it's literally just a separate solar system altogether, or it's like nothing but on Earth, so you have like a bunch of old Earth map nodes, you know what I mean? So it's like a separate screen, like Railjack or whatever. I could see something like that. But yeah, that's my take. Not too doomer, but I think it's going to be more of the same. I think they're going to work on quality of life. I think most of the people that are running DE right now have a massive laundry list of, man, it'd be nice if that was in the game that they're working on. Um, and I think they're going to work on it. So it is what it is. They've already shown that they're willing to work on streamlining stuff. They haven't touched the focus school yet, or the focus schools. And for those that asked, Eidolons are still the fastest that I'm aware of. Obviously, you can do the ESO farm, and the Zeraman, the Centurions or whatever, have a lot of affinity associated with them. So a couple of Cascade level caps and you're squared away. But anyway, thanks for listening, dudes. I hope this helps. I hope this answers your question. Jason Atreides and Blako 43. Anyway, take it easy, guys. Have a blessed day. Thank you for the recommendation. Normally don't get to talk about stuff like this too much. Thank you, guys.